The Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nissan is called Shabbos Parshas HaChodesh because we read that week a special haftarah which comes from Parshas Bo. It's Shemos Perek Yud Beis, and this within it has the first mitzvah that Bnei Israel were commanded as a nation. In the book of Bereshit, there are 3 commandments, but they are given to the individuals. And as a nation, when we have left Egypt, we have been given the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh to sanctify the new month. And in Shemos Perek Yud Beis Pasuk Beis we read, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem, this month is for you. Rosh Chodeshim Rishon Hu Lochem L'Chodesh Hashana. This is the first month of months that shall be for you, for the months of the year. And it's very interesting that this is the first mitzvah. Why not anything else? So the Sefarno, Rav Avadia Sefarno, tells us, and I'm going to read, Mekan va'elech yiyu hachadoshim shelachem. From here and onwards, the months shall be for you, la'asos bohem kirtzonchem, that you should do what you want in those months, like do with it as your will, as you wish. Aval bimei hashibud, when you were all the time that you were in slavery in Egypt, lo hayu yemechem shelachem. Your days were not your own. Your time was not your own. You couldn't do whatever you liked. You had to work as slaves in Egypt. And I think it's absolutely really interesting this year in 2024. Shabbos Parshas HaChodesh falls out the 5th and 6th of April. And I think to myself, isn't it interesting how different people measure time differently? So 5th and 6th of April is very significant to somebody who works in the financial industry, if they're an accountant, because that is the beginning and the end of the fiscal year, the tax year. What's important to you? So for an accountant, your whole life revolves around the fiscal year and getting tax returns in by the 31st of January. If you're a student, for example, you live your life according to the academic year. So you're worried about the beginning of September and the end of June and the end of July when you break up from school and things like that. What's important to you and the way you measure time is about what is important and what is the focus. So I'd like to say the first thing I'd like to speak about, Parashat HaChodesh, is about time, measuring time, thinking about what people do with their time and how they spend their time. Well, now that we're not slaves, although we are going to be Ovdei Hashem, the servants of Hashem, and then how do we spend our time? That's the first thing I want to talk about. The next thing I want to address is something that Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who in his book Collected Writings, published by Feldheim 2012, if anybody wants to look it up, it's in volume 7, pages 428, 429, and Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says the following, and he asks the question, why is it that Kiddush HaChodesh, sanctifying the new moon, the new month, was the first mitzvah that we got as a nation? And he says, when Hashem set out to create himself a nation that would accept and obey his law, the very first institution that Hashem gave to the Bnei Israel as a nation was not the revelation at Har Sinai, but Chodesh, the institution of rejuvenation and atonement, of hope and faith in the future. This thread of rejuvenation, atonement, and constant recreation runs through the entire codes of our lives as individuals and as a nation. Then he says, paganism is hopelessly caught up in the iron shackles of the past. Not so Judaism. Borne aloft upon the wings of its liberating and saving God, Judaism knows how to move forward into the future. Of course, things have happened in the past and people have to learn from their mistakes and move on. But we mustn't get bound up in the past and think only about things that happened, but we happened and dwell on it and be upset. Of course, we have to learn from our mistakes and we have to do teshuvah and we have to improve and repair the damage we've done. But we have this amazing, unique power of teshuvah and we can wipe the slate clean. We shouldn't get downtrodden and depressed and start thinking about, look how terrible yesterday was. We have to think to ourselves, right, that happened yesterday. How am I going to improve myself? The Yetzer Hara tries its best to drag us down. And I'm going to quote from The Lion King, where Rafiki tells Simba, oh yes, the past can hurt, but the way I see it is that either you can run from it or learn from it. It is not to the past, but to the future that our work as parents and teachers should be directed. Hashem is ready to erase the past in order to open the gates to a new and better future. And the moon itself gives us that amazing lesson. Every month, the moon waxes and wanes. It gets bigger and gets smaller. And that's the unique feature of the moon. And we as Jews measure our time not according to the sun, which stays still, it's there all the time, dependable, reliable. The festivals come round every year and the earth moves around the sun, but it's a cycle. It's a cycle, but really it's a spiral. We're hoping every year, even though it's a cycle, that we're moving up and making improvements, that we're moving up a stage. The moon tells us something. It diminishes till it almost disappears. When things look at the darkest, there is hope. The same is true for us. Even if we find ourselves, and believe me, now we find ourselves as a nation and the whole land of Israel and Yisrael and the whole world, we're in a difficult situation. We are hoping and praying, no matter how bad it seems, and now it seems so bad, that we have this amazing power, a gift that God has given us, the power of renewal. We can start a fresh cycle. And the moon starts a fresh cycle every month when it looks like the moon's gone and it's hidden and dark. In fact, we say twice before we say Shema, in the brachas before Shema, when we're saying like Yotze Or, we say Uvatuvo Machadesh B'chol Yom Tomid Maaseh Bereshis. Every day, Hashem, in His goodness, gives us the opportunity to renew and recreate ourselves and improve ourselves. The chief rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, in his drasha, Parshas HaChodesh, in 1988, which hasn't yet been printed, but it will be, but I heard Rabbi Leitner quote it recently, and he says the word shana, a year, is lishanot, to repeat, but it's also to change, and it's also twice. But those two words almost seem like opposites, and we have a chodesh, which is a month, so lehit chadesh is to renew, but it's also new, but renew and new. We say when we put the Torah back in the ark, we say Chadesh Yomeinu Kekedem, renew our days like old. That sort of sounds a little bit oxymoron. How can our new days be like old? But that's sort of like a Jewish thing, isn't it? We have the oldest medieval shul in Prague, the Alt Neu Shul, the Old New Shul. And in fact, Theodore Herzl's book 1902, when she wrote about the land of Israel, he called it Old New Land, Alt Neuland. It's sort of like that's what we do. We want the old, but we want the new. We want your new renewal. In fact, when Nachum Sokolov translated the book that Theodore Herzl wrote called Alt Neuland, he gave it the poetic title in Hebrew. He gave it Tel Aviv, because the word Aviv, Tel is an ancient mound, and Aviv has spring connotations, which has renewal and rebirth. So it's sort of like a very interesting thing. And in fact, the Jewish calendar is arranged that we have a leap year, and this year we have a leap year because Pesach must fall in the springtime. Pesach is in Nissan, and Nissan is the month of freedom. And in fact, nature itself shows us freedom. We see that Bnei Israel were removed from Egypt, and they were taken out of Meitzar. The word Mitzrayim means a narrow, constricting place, and we were given our freedom. And in fact, nature itself, the blossoms come out and they burst free and they burst forth. And we see after the long winter, where we see like trees looking like they're dead, like they look like they're going to have no life out of them, but nevertheless, every year in spring we have a reawakening, and we have the most beautiful we see all the beautiful daffodils growing and the beautiful blossoms. It's just so beautiful. And in fact, from Rosh Chodesh Nissan, we have a special mitzvah. The Gemara Brachas tells us, Mem Gimel Omid Beis, it says anyone who goes out in the month of Nissan should recite a bracha for appreciating the blossoms. Shelo chesed ba'olama klum uvara v'brias tovas ve'ilanus tovas lahis na'os bohem b'nei adam, that we have to love and appreciate the thing that we have this nature that looks like it's nature, but it's really Yad Hashem. Every year we see these beautiful blossoms, rebirth and renewal, giving us that reminder that Hashem is there, and we have this amazing opportunity. In fact, the word Nissan comes from the root nes, a miracle. Every Nissan, we have this miraculous rejuvenation of nature, but also we have an opportunity for our own rejuvenation, and to help us to allow ourselves to remove ourselves from our own meitzar, from whatever straits that we are in, whatever narrow place we are in. Nissan gives us that amazing opportunity. And in fact, the word Nissan is very similar to the word Nitzan. And Nitzan is found in Shir HaShirim, and Nitzan means blossoms. And so if you look in Shir HaShirim, Perek Beis, Posuk Yud Beis, we have Hanitzanim Niru Ba'eretz. Ace hazamir higia v'kol hatar nishmar ba'atzenu. The blossoms have appeared. The time for pruning, or perhaps singing can translate it differently, has come, and the song of the turtle dove, or perhaps according to the Midrashic view, somebody who is touring the land, and the tourists are heard in the land. And Torah Tamima gives us lots of different examples of who could be touring the land. It could be Moshe and Aaron, it could be Mordechai, it could be Ezra, it could be Eliyahu, it could be Melchizedek. And in fact, there's a midrash from the Pesikta de Rav Kahana, who would have been about 500 CE, and he says, Zeh Melech HaMashiach, and I think it's a Mordechai ben David song. V'kol hatar nishma v'yatzenu, uwa uwa uwe, if anyone knows that song. Higia zmanam shel rashaim sheyishberu. That we've come to a time where the Mashiach is coming and the wicked are to be broken, as Prophet Yeshaya tells us, Shavah Hashem mateh rashaim shevet mishlem. That Hashem has broken the staff of the wicked, the rods of the tyrants. That's Yeshaya Yud Dalad Hey. Higia zmano shel beis hamikdash sheyiboneh. We are reaching a time where the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. And then the Medrash quotes Prophet Haggai, which is Perek Beis Posuk Tes. Gadol yiyeh kavod habayis hazeh ha'acharon min harishon. The glory of this new temple shall be greater than that of the former one. Amar Hashem Svakos, Hashem says, Uva makom hazeh etein shalom na'um Hashem. And in that place, I will grant peace. And I'm suggesting, we're hoping now, this is what the Prophet Haggai is prophesying. And the Gemara in Rosh Hashana tells us, V'Nissan nig'alu, u'v'Nissan asidim lahigael. In Nissan, the Jewish people were redeemed. And in the future, the Jewish people will again be redeemed. Rabbi Dr. Akiva Tatz, who teaches at JLE, very famous South African rabbi living in London, he tells us in his book Living Inspired, page 145, the spiritual forces operating at Pesach time each year are such that the Jewish people, and in fact any individual Jew, can achieve the impossible if these forces are used and attempt to leap up to reach a whole new level of sensitivity or personality development can have such a degree of success if undertaken on Pesach, which may be far more difficult at any other time of the year. There is a special divine assistance offered at this time of the year which makes it possible to leap up many levels of growth that would be impossible ordinarily. The very word Pesach means leaping over. At a deeper level, the connotation is that we can leap up many levels of growth. As we stay here on the cusp of Nissan, like the nature blossoms and blooms, may we all have that rebirth from winter to spring, that we know that within us, like hidden within us, like a seed that rots, it has to get to a very rotten place before it grows and expands and becomes something wonderful. We've all got that hidden within us, planted within us. And I hope this year, as the Gemara in Rosh Hashana tells us, B'Nissan nigalu, in Nissan B'nai Israel were redeemed. We've got that spiritual energy. The month of Nissan is right at our fingertips. B'Nissan asidim ligael. And in the future, the Jewish people were redeemed. Believe me, we need it more now than ever. I wish everybody a good Shabbos, good Chodesh, and thank you for listening.